Chair, we only have 5 right now. We are waiting for one more for a quorum.
All right, sounds good.
Chair, we have 7.
All right, wonderful. And it's 5 o'clock, so let's just go ahead and get started. The first item on the agenda is that I approved it. So let me first note that we have modified the agenda. Item 5A is being pulled from consideration for tonight. It will return hopefully next month in the format of a public hearing. But so that I'll just get that agenda change out of the way. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. Brenda, if you would take roll for us, that'd be great.
Board Member Borisky.
Present.
Board Member Freeman.
Present.
Board Member Jolie.
Present.
Board Member Mercier. Board Member Ridley.
Present.
Councilmember Russell.
Present.
Councilmember Ward. Mayor Sierra.
Present.
Vice Chair Habenik. Chair Moore.
Present. All right, thank you, Brenda. Next order of business is approval of the minutes from our July 9th meeting. Could I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve. Second.
Thank you. Any edits, changes, discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes have been approved. Item 4 is public forum. Brenda, do we have anyone from the public to speak with us tonight?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5, new business action items. As mentioned, we've pulled 5A from consideration. Yeah, just as a FYI for everyone, given that it's a variance and the determination, the public hearing structure is more, we felt it was more appropriate. So that's why that's being deferred. So that'll take us to item 5B, purchase of Nevada ditch water rights. Chris Edelstein, I think you'll be taking over.
That is correct. Good evening, Chris Edelstein. I'm the Environmental Compliance Manager for Utilities. So what we're bringing forward this evening is the purchase of a Nevada ditch water right. So the Nevada ditch flows from the south to the north. So it's just north of 470 to the south and ends up in Bowles Ave in Littleton. There's a number of shareholders with the ditch. Denver Water is the majority owner of the rights. We are second to Denver. We do currently use Nevada ditch rights both as water into the Allen Water Treatment Plant, and we also lease some of that water to Centennial Water and Sanitation District as well. So there's up 260 total shares of the ditch, and currently we own 114.4 of those shares. So the current owners of a half a share reached out to us to see if we had an interest in purchasing that right from them. They're very senior water rights back in the 1861, 1865 timeframe, so they are some of the more senior in the neighborhood of our water rights. It's currently in an irrigation right. So for us to be able to use it for a municipal source, we would have to take it to court and have that changed to be able to use it inside the City of Englewood in our distribution system, but it is currently in irrigation. It'll just give us a little bit more security, additional water rights. So currently, there's still 7, as I said, rights in irrigation. So that's really what's left that isn't purchased by one of the local water utilities. So it's just kind of giving us a little bit more of a security blanket on the water that we have. The purchase price that we've agreed to with the sellers is $20,000 for that half a share. So with that, any questions?
I have 2. When do we anticipate going forward with the change case for that? And then what does the average yield look like per share?
All right, so at this time, we don't have exact date of moving forward with that, the conversion. We spoke with our engineering consultants this afternoon, and their estimate is between 10 to 14 acre feet a year.
Part of the reason we don't have an estimate is because it is an irrigation right, and we do have irrigation uses throughout our system. So we want to look to see if there's a way that we can use it as an irrigation right somewhere. And if we can't, then we'll go through a change case and go through that whole process. But we haven't done that analysis yet, and we want to leave ourselves leave the options open to be able to utilize the share as efficiently as possible.
Any other questions? All right. Well, then can I get a motion for item 5B as written?
I move the motion.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Moving on to 5C and Tasha Neal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tasha Neal. I'm an engineer at Utilities. I will be presenting on city ditch agreements and easements for Santa Fe Park development. As you can see, city ditch is running in blue, and we're relocating that. This is a critical infrastructure for Englewood that carries water to the Allen Water Treatment Plant, as well as other users along the ditch. The River Park development is at Mineral and South Santa Fe. Below that, we are talking about today, Santa Fe Park development. I am here to present the 7 proposed agreements with the 4 entities listed below. And I'm going to share location of each of these, and we are asking for your approval of the agreements and easements to move forward with construction. The first one is Southwest Metropolitan Water and Sanitation District. There are 2 city ditch crossing and license agreements. Crossing number 1 is a 12-inch water line. Crossing number 2 is a 16-inch water line. Toll has temporary construction easements for both of these water lines. So crossing number 1 for the 12-inch water line, crossing number 2 for the 16-inch water line. There's also Xcel Energy. This is the approximate location of the electrical feed that will feed the Santa Fe Park development. This includes a crossing and license agreement of city ditch and a temporary construction easement. We also have an easement with T-Ball. It's a relinquishment and grant of easement for city ditch and McClellan pump station access. There are no costs to the city for any of this work. Our process has been including reviewing for engineering, coordinating with attorneys and entities for all these agreements. This concludes the 7 agreements. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. We will have further agreements in September Water Sewer Board in the future. Any questions?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think we have something like 20 more agreements that are coming with this, and this all has to do with they're developing that whole area. The ditch runs right through the middle of the development. We got them to move the ditch into a pipe along Santa Fe, and as part of that, there's a number of relinquished agreements, new agreements, crossing agreements, things like that. So this is going to be an ongoing process as they develop that, and so we'll have more agreements coming forward. But this is the first a critical set to keep them moving on their project. Oh,
City ditch and the drain line, which is also
Right.
a part of that parcel.
Marjan has a question. Go ahead, Marjan.
Hello, Peter. I was wondering, that first crossing you're saying is the 12-inch, and then it goes to a 16-inch. Does it switch, or is it? I have a hard time kind of imagining what's happening.
These
Can
are
you
two,
explain?
yeah, these are two separate water lines. The one on top is crossing number 1, it's a 12-inch that will cross City Ditch, and the one on the bottom is crossing number 2, and it's a 16-inch water line.
and these lines are their lines to serve their development. All they're looking for from us is an agreement to cross the ditch. So they'll be crossing at different grades. So we'll have the ditch in a pipe, and either below, it's probably below the ditch will be the water line supplying the development. But we need the agreement because they're going to be entering into the easement, which contains the ditch.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
And this is Cammie. I had
Go ahead, Kimmy.
quick. So this may just be for me. Hopefully it's helpful for everyone, but hearing that there are going to be 20 or so of these additional agreements coming, it would be helpful if there was an additional slide on these presentations to show how this is building at this property, of each sort of, like, this was the first set of agreements that we saw, here's the second, and so on and so forth, so we can kind of see how they're all playing together through this process. And that may just be me, but as we get these over time, it would just be nice to see how they're all related to one another.
I think it's a great suggestion because you have two different developers going on here that we're trying to coordinate those two developers. We're trying to coordinate their construction schedules. And so, we've been working with the Santa Fe Park developer for the last probably 3 years, and have done a number of agreements with them. And then now River Park is moving. And so I think it's something we can definitely do, put a historical, here's the progression when we've done things and here's what's coming so that you can see how many agreements come with a set of projects like this.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thanks, Chair.
I'll slide in a question too, Peter, Tosh, these all appear to be, I'll say, standard. I mean, there's a lot related to this property, but in terms of the crossings and everything, again, these are somewhat run of the mill for what we do. Is there anything particularly unique about the ones we're working on tonight?
No, these are all pretty standard. I think the more interesting ones are when we actually talk about, construction agreements for the ditch and things like that. And these are just a lot of crossing agreements, which is pretty run of the mill along the ditch as a whole.
And our rights are always protected. Our liability is always covered.
We work with our legal department to make sure that all that happens, and they do every time.
Good. Any other questions? All right, then let's move to a motion to approve items 5C1 through 5C7 as written.
So moved.
A second. Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Continuing our trek through the alphabet, 5D, and then Alexenberg.
Ben's making his way up to the table. Ben is our EI&C manager and will be presenting these items.
Thank you. I believe that Peter just introduced me. Yes, I am Ben Luxembourg. I'm the EI&C manager for utilities. And this evening, I want to bring for your consideration our annual on-call contracts for our electrical and our instrumentation contractors. And there we go. Thank you. And every year we need to have these on-call contractors available to us in order to perform some of these particular items here. And so our approach to utilizing these contractors is to have them help us with our remote site maintenance for electrical and also for our Allen Water Treatment Plant maintenance activities, both electrical and as I said, instrumentation and controls. So part of those is our main and our emergency backup power. Emergency backup power, just recently, we did some work on our emergency generator in order to improve the controls on it and give us a little bit better controls and information that comes back from that so we can operate it better. Also, they handle all of our communications backbones so we can communicate between our control panels and from our remote sites to the treatment plant, so we can get a better idea of what our remote sites are doing, flow measurement and so forth. And then also they help us out 24/7 in order to troubleshoot anything that goes wrong in any part of our system. So we can call them at any time and bring them in to help us do that. And we've had to do that quite a few times because of power outages over the past 6 months, because Excel's been interesting, we'll call it that, in terms of providing power for us. We've had more power outages in the past 6 months than we had for the past 3 or 4 years. So very helpful contractors. All right, so we have 2 different categories. One is electrical. This addresses that, and they provide a lot of the hardcore electrical work, which is wire and conduit equipment. And we utilize 3 contractors to do that. Gilmore Electric, McDade Woodcock, and Power Solutions Group. Each one of them has a particular niche in the way they support us in terms of engineering versus hardcore day-to-day electrical, which is Gilmore. And then McDade handles a lot of the larger items that in terms of that they can handle in terms of resources. Power Solutions Group provides engineering services and testing services, for our main medium voltage and our 480 volt voltage equipment. All right, our second category is instrumentation. We have 2 contractors, Huffman Engineering and Timberline Electric. Each one of them also has a niche. Huffman Engineering is more on the engineering and control support, and Timberline Electric helps us with our older MOSCAD communication systems that we have at our remote sites. It's very obsolete, and they are the only company in the entire Rocky Mountain region that has authorization in order to get into those particular PLCs at our remote sites. It's one of the reasons why we try to keep them on contract. All right, so we have a number of different things that we presently in motion. Emergency backup power systems. One of those is a generator, and we've been improving that. We also are putting in uninterruptible power supplies, which is UPSs, batteries. Those are required for replacement about every 3 years, and we have them throughout several locations within the plant and at each remote facility. So our contractors help us with the replacement of those batteries. We also have variable frequency drive replacements, which are the components that actually control the speeds of our pumps and so forth. In the past few months, we replaced a VFD for our Zone 1 Pump 1 pump and utilized a Gilmore Electric in order to do that job. And then, of course, motor control center replacements. We are in the process of replacing one motor control center, which is MCC7, but we have others in place. these are 25, 30-year-old MCCs, and so as they get to the point where they're approaching failure, we take a look at these and replace components within them, or try to plan to replace the entire MCC in order to update to current standards. All right, any questions?
So if I could add a little context on this. So I think over the last few years, this is one of the areas that we've made a significant number of improvements in terms of resiliency for the plant, most specifically. We had a lot of vulnerabilities that I think we're slowly chipping away at, and with Ben on board and some of these contractors helping us do this, we're getting the plant from an electrical perspective modernized. All three of those electrical contractors, whether it's Gilmore Electric, Magna4 now Power Solutions, or MWI, has been at either the Allen plant or South Platte Renew well into the weekend, late at night, responded within a couple hours to major power failure issues, and been there with our staff through the solution of those power failures. Gilmore has been out many times at 2 a.m. as we've had these power failures at the Allen plant over the last year that Ben talked about. We had a switchgear breaker blow up a few years ago that Magna4 came out on site and rebuilt it. Had one on the shelf, let us use it, rebuilt the other one. But the main switchgear is the main power to the plant. That was a South Platte Renew. MWI last year, we had a switch component fail, which caused basically a backwards breaker electrical failure all the way back to the pole for our blowers over at South Platte Renew. And our blowers are incredibly important to keeping the bugs alive so that we can actually treat the wastewater. And they were there for 48 hours straight, helping us trace the problem as well as fix the problem. So we've had extensive work and experience with these contractors. They're very reliable, and they are always there to help us solve these problems when we have these failure problems, because the one thing about water is it takes really big electricity to make water work for our community. So just a couple of contextual stories that I think help give perspective of what these contracts are and why they're important.
Peter, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Obviously, I don't have an issue with what we're seeing in terms of the renewals themselves, but the underlying issue, is it just the life of the components, electrical? Is that something that we could be more proactive with, or is it just, this is just part of running the facility?
Well, that's what we're doing is so many of these systems have been run well past the end of their useful life, which I think Ben touched on. And so what we're doing is we're triaging some of those, but we're putting in place a programmatic replacement approach so that we're not left in this, we don't fix everything now and then 15 years from now we're left with the same issue, so that we're not pushing these things so far past their useful life. We're putting them on a rotation similar to what we have at South Platte Renew. We have a very comprehensive, proactive replacement program so that we don't get to the point of failure and emergency, and really we're digging ourselves out of that hole. And as we dig ourselves out of that hole, we're planning for a programmatic approach long term.
Thanks, Peter.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, Marjan has her hand up.
Oh, I missed it. Thanks. Go ahead, Marjan.
Thank you, Joe. I was wondering, Ben, if you could go back to that one page before the last. You were saying Timbers is the only company that actually can work with us, correct?
Yes, for just one particular aspect of our control systems at our remote sites, and that is an old Motorola, what we call MOSCAT. It's a brand name of a remote transmission unit, similar to a PLC that I explained during our PLC replacements project. And they have contracted with Motorola to have a sole source in terms of programming and parts supply and so forth for those old components. And they went out of support in 2011, right? So they still maintain that, but they have sent us a letter that says we won't maintain those because we can't get parts, but we will maintain those systems if the entity is in the process of upgrading them, which we will present a project sometime later in the year for all of our remote sites to modernize all of those as well. So yes, Timberline is the only one we can go to in order to get programming support for those particular RTUs.
This goes back to digging ourselves out of the hole. There's a number of these systems that are just old and out of date and not supported. And we have to use Timberline until such time we replace it with a new modern system, at which point there'll be many other contractors that should be able to help us with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Timberline
Thank you,
also
Peter,
helps,
for reading my mind. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just couldn't figure it out. Why was the uniqueness about that company? Thank you for answering that. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, and so Timberline also helps us with other systems too. It's just they happen to be the one group that can help with this old outdated system until we get it replaced.
Yes, they're helping us with replacing some of the old and antiquated and broken flow measurement devices that are all along the city ditch and within the plant and at the reservoirs, right? So they do more than just, support those MOSCAD units for us.
Thank you, Ben.
Not hearing any other questions. Can I get a motion to recommend City Council approve the contracts and agreements 5D1 through 5D5 as written?
Move the motion.
Second.
Second from somebody, please.
Thought it was on. Second.
I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Any further discussion? All right, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 5E. Peter, on to you.
Thank you, Chair. We are here tonight, both myself and Director Rochelle from Public Works, who handles the Stormwater Fund, and we are going to talk about our final draft proposed budget that we'll be recommending to Council for approval in the fall. And we presented this a couple months ago. There's been a very few changes. I know Council's also seen it a number of times. So what we were going to do was kind of hit the high points and not go through the full presentation slide by slide. But if there's any point in time you'd like us to stop or things you have questions on, we'd be happy to address those. So we'll start with the water fund, and then we'll go through the sewer fund, and then ultimately stormwater fund. So the overall, from a water perspective, what we're trying to do is you can see what our system is and what our wastewater system is. I think many of you have seen this slide before, so it's just a background of who we are. Our strategy is to modernize the utility. A couple of the last items are doing just that, and then our focus is on improving the customer experience through taste, odor, and hardness, and a billing system and things like that. This is our structure. I think we've talked about that before. The connection to strategic plan is infrastructure and transportation primarily, although there's some other connections. And then essentially here, where we're focused is taste, odor, and hardness, lead service line, and then aging infrastructure. And then some of the things that we're accomplishing right now as we speak, and I'm sure many of you are experiencing this as we speak, is the AMI program, some of the improvements to the space improvements for the Allen Water Treatment Plant, and then our work on the city ditch, which we anticipate moving into construction here shortly. So the total budget request goes up a little bit. This has everything to do with execution of the lead program and utilizing those federal and state funds that we've secured. We've secured over $100 million over the last couple of years in loans and grants, and we are using that to invest in the system. You can see what the total, where the increases are. The vast majority of the increase is two places, is in capital and then debt service, because we are taking on these new loans, so our debt service numbers go up. Revenue proposal we've talked about. So in keeping with our long-term financial model, we anticipate an annual increase of 4.5% on the water rates. That's essentially the usage component of the water rates. The water connection fee, which is what we charge new connections to the service, goes up by 3.72%, which is consistent with the ENR construction cost index. Our capital investment fee, if you recall, goes up $1 every other year, and this is one of those years. And then what we've talked about for the past few months is adding a $5 fee for the debt service on the drinking water revolving fund loan that we secured earlier this year, which is primarily funding improvements to the distribution system and water plant, as well as the lead program. You can see the total revenue versus total expenses and where that all sits in terms of what we are, and the gap is we're funding a number of things with that debt that we've issued. Our capital projects, these are what we've talked about in the past, and you can see it's space improvements, it's the treatment plant, it's the process, meters, pump stations, distribution system. We've got some supply projects, and then ultimately the lead program, which we are heavy into construction right now and should be for probably about the next 1.5 to 2 years. Fortunately, the contractor has put together an aggressive accelerated schedule for us. So if everything holds to what's happening right now, we should get that program actually done faster than we were originally anticipating. Some of the enhancements, so these are the new, somewhat out of the ordinary requests. One is the water master plan update. We did the original master plan in 2019, adopted in 2020. That was the initial baseline when there had never been a master plan before. It's now 5 years, so we want to use our in-house knowledge with our own experience and incorporating the new projects and understanding really the trajectory of the utility to update that master plan and inform the financial models after that. And then water resources legal, the $80,000 is related to, we've been told we've got a couple court cases that may actually go to court. When they go to court, they cost a lot more. And so we're not anticipating every one of them going, but we're anticipating at least one of them. If more of them go, then we'll likely need to find additional funding. This is just a summary of the master plan that you've seen before and the legal. And then really the reason we're able to do this is because over the last few years, we've secured over $100 million in loans and funding. So we'll go through the mountain graph, I think is what we call it now. And you can see where we are in that time frame and how that 7 years is building. So this is where we started in 2020, and then we add the additional new rates and the capital investment fee, the revenue that brings in, and then ARPA, and then the WIFIA, and then our bill money, which is principal forgiveness, as well as additional funding from the federal infrastructure bill. And then this is the state SRF making up the difference there. And then the lead reduction fee, additional revenue will get us closer to the line long term. And then ultimately we have these pink gaps, which we actually, as we continue to move forward, the way that we think we're going to be addressing a lot of the pink gaps in the near term is bringing the actual blue line closer in line to closer to what we have available, as opposed to generating more revenue. So we'll be eliminating that initial pink by bringing that blue line more in line with the multicolored stack of money that we have. And we think that's possible right now. Now, things could change with construction and things like that, but we think that gets us easily, or we think that gets us through 2028. We're working on plans for 28 through 31. And then like I've talked about before, I think by the time we get to 2031, we have a longer term funding structural issue that we have to work on. But we have 7 years to do it, and we think we can come up with solutions over the next 7 years. This is essentially where we are. And if you look at, we're in 2024 going into 2025, we're hitting the peak of the mountain to dig ourselves out of the hole. I think that's the metaphors. And then we'll long-term get into a more sustainable approach to investment. And these are the, like the mayor had brought up, these are the programmatic ongoing investments so we don't get behind the 8 ball again. This is how it compares to other entities. So where we fall today, when you add stormwater, where we fall from our current rates of 24 to where we are in 25. What this doesn't account for is all these other places we're anticipating will raise their rates as well. And so, you know, we have to consider that we're comparing our 25 rates against their 24 because we don't know what their increases are yet. You can see what happens when you go to 10,000 gallons, ours becomes more affordable. When you go to 2,000 gallons, we move more towards the middle. That just is a makeup of how the variable cost of water is compared to other agencies. But as a whole, from an average perspective, for water, sewer, and storm, we are staying below the average and to the left of the middle. And if you look at the comparative organizations, we tried to compare as many relevant front range that we could get information for to really highlight how we're stacking these 3 utilities from a revenue perspective and continually paying attention to that effect on our ratepayers for their monthly bill. These are the things we're looking at long term, and I think it's all stuff we've talked about many, many times. And like I said, I think we're somewhat in that exciting phase of really constructing things to dig ourselves out of the hole, which is exciting, but it also we're interfacing a lot with our customer and causing them a lot of changes right now, and so we're trying to work them through as smoothly as possible. Questions on the water fund? I'll turn this over to John or Chair Moore.
Sorry, if there are no questions on the water fund, there we go. Marjan, go ahead.
Peter, you're saying that the chart, that the comparative chart, you're comparing with last year's. Did you guys consider the inflation and everything else in that chart?
Well, so we compare actual. So let me go back to the charts. So what we do here is we actually compare. Yeah. So we take someone who used 2,000 gallons. If they use 2,000 gallons, this is what their bill would be in 2025 versus 2024 versus our calculation to the best of our ability of what anybody in any one of these other municipalities or districts pays for the same 2,000 gallon usage. So we're building apples to apples comparisons and stacking water, sewer, storm, as well as any kind of mill levy, which is in purple, which would be on an annual tax bill.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. Peter, want to move on?
Yep. Okay. So thank you, Chair. The sewer fund budget proposal, you can see doesn't move that much. It's about 4%, and the bulk of the sewer fund is Englewood's 50% funding of South Platte Renew. And you can see how that all shakes out. Our capital actually goes down a little bit this year because of as we have a long-term 5-year and 10-year capital program at South Platte Renew. It fluctuates up and down, plus or minus $2 million. So we generally keep it around $16 million. That's what's financially stable. But there are years based on construction, like this year, where it's 18 million, and then we have other years where it's 15 million or it's 16 and a half. And so we're going into decrease year just because of the execution of capital. Revenue proposal, it's 4.5% again, based on a long-term plan. You can see what happens with the inside and outside sewer rates that we adjusted a few years ago, and the connection fee follows the same cost index average. Total budget, you can see the difference. This one moves up a bit, but again is pretty stable year over year. Capital projects, so this is specific to the actual sewer system for Englewood, and the first line item is South Platte Renew funding from Englewood's side, and then the other 4 projects are specific to Englewood's sewer system and sewer enterprise. The only enhancement is we're going to update the sewer master plan at the same time we do the water master plan. And then our ongoing considerations are staffing, asset management, and then South Platte Renew funding, which for the council members, in a week and a half, we'll have the joint council meeting with Littleton, at which point we'll talk about the immediate future for South Platte Renew and then the long-term future. When we get into the 8 to 10 year time frame, we start seeing a number of significant regulatory drivers that we've known about for the last 5 years that are starting to creep into the 10-year window. And so, again, we still have time to plan for it, but we have to be thinking about it today so that we're not dealing with an issue, trying to deal with an issue with only a year to plan for it. That's it for sewer.
Any questions?
I would like to ask a question. It really wasn't in the presentation, but I know it involves this department. When we were going over the budget last night, Garden in the Box is being funded out of utilities. Is that standard? I mean, that's a little bit problematic to me because of all the fees that we're paying that we would do that.
Yeah, so turf replacement, garden in the box, those types of xeric garden, native species garden programs are often funded through the conservation programs of other water utilities. And it's a way to encourage our customers to be more water conscious, to be less focused on turf. And so the funding amount that we're putting in, which I believe the request is $4,000, really that's one of those programs to help our customers be more water efficient, which when you look at water rights portfolios, the least cost approach to water demand and water rights is reducing the amount of demand on your current water rights portfolio, as opposed to going out and trying to find more water, because there's just not more water available. So conservation programs are those kinds of things that help us stretch out our water rights portfolio, especially when we're in potentially years where there's low yield or we're in a drought condition for a few years. And so it is a common practice for utilities, because we need to be focused on conservation, to fund programs like that, because it ultimately does bring down that Kentucky bluegrass demand. So it's not uncommon.
I appreciate that, but when you go back to that mountain, all the citizens in this city are paying for that mountain. And this is just one more expense that I'm assuming we're funding it somewhere out of that mountain.
Yeah, it comes, everything comes out of the mountain.
So, I mean, when you start adding up all of these little things that you're talking about, water bills are going out of sight. And so I have a problem with that, we do that.
And I think it's, it's much a philosophy thing, because we can buy more rights, we can build more infrastructure to ensure that we have more water available, or we can invest in programs, and we can invest in programs that help to decrease that total demand, which is what conservation programs do. So 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of focus on conservation programs because there wasn't really the drought focus in the West that I would say has occurred in the last 2 decades. So as a complement to building more infrastructure, buying more water rights, and buying more water, a way that you accomplish that is you work with the customers to reduce their demand. And that ultimately results in less overall cost to the system because we need to supply less water.
So explain this to me, because we have priority water rights. I've lived in Englewood for a long time, probably back in, I want to say in the 80s. I don't think it was the 70s, probably in the 80s. We had water restrictions. But for the most part, we're selling water to other people. We're not going out looking for more water. And so I guess my question is, why are we being penalized because our forefathers saw the need to establish priority water rights? And I'm just saying, it doesn't make sense to me that we are borrowing money, we're paying interest on it, and then it really is not a whole lot of money, but in a sense, it seems to me like we're punishing the ratepayers.
And by no means is our goal to punish ratepayers. We're trying to complement all aspects of both the supply side and the demand side of water. And yes, we have a strong water rights portfolio. That strong water rights portfolio can only go so far in times of extreme drought, which we have experienced. And so that's where that water that we have available for sale becomes becomes available for us at times that we need it. At times that we don't need it, we sell it, and what that does is that keeps our rates down for the rest of our customers, which is what's great about that portfolio is we by selling that wholesale water, we keep everybody's rates down by the amount that we offset by that revenue, which I think is around $4 million. And so that's $4 million more dollars that we don't have to charge to the small customer base of 34,000 people because we're able to utilize that portfolio. Ways that we can continue to do that is to balance the investment in infrastructure, which is the common way, which is we build more, we buy more. The problem with buying more water is there's just not a lot of water available. But the other way that you can really have an effect to stretch out the portfolio, especially in times when things may be drier, is by helping to reduce the overall demand. And Garden in a Box is a small program that helps do that. And that helps to do that. And it's not uncommon as a program for other entities to do that. We look at that as we look at the holistic program as a whole, and it's actually why we do so much work to compare our bills so that your concern around the water rates keep going up, and yes, they do, but we also want to show that we are still very affordable in comparison to the rest of the Front Range, and a lot of that has to do with forefathers, finding those water rights and securing them back in the 50s and putting us on a firm footing so that we can do that. So I don't know if I helped there, but there's some contextual background of how it can be important.
I understand that. I just don't necessarily agree with it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Peter, just one quick question. I don't think it's possible over the next 8 years, but do we ever foresee a point where we lower the minimum water gallons from the 6,000 that we currently do?
Actually, yeah. So actually what this is part of the ongoing change to our water and sewer rate structure. Is our water and sewer rate structure is our water structure is the only declining block rate structure left in the state. And so it's part of our water efficiency plan to move from it, which means that as you use more water, it's cheaper, which which every other entity, it's the opposite. Use more water and it becomes more expensive. So we have on our next set of initiatives to look at the sewer fund, because we use a minimum charge of 6,000 gallons, and we know there are people who use 2,000 or 3,000 gallons. So we want to make sure that we're balancing people who use less, but also ensuring that anytime we change a rate structure, we still have the expense budget. We just have to figure out how we're allocating that fairly with the new rate structure. All of that is, I would say, is forthcoming in the next 2 years. Is new rate? Yeah, we need to get past the billing system conversion, and then we were originally going to do it this year, and then the billing system conversion has been a struggle. So as soon as we get through that and it's smooth, that is actually next on our list.
Just something interesting. When we had water rationing years ago, then all of a sudden the the water department couldn't pay their bills. Mm-hmm. So you're limiting the amount of water you could use, and they were raising the price for it.
Yeah, and that's what Denver Water experienced when they after the 2002 drought, they said we need to use less water, and then their people in their finance department said, wait a minute, we're not getting the revenue we need. So that's where we look at, and this is just a preview of what will be coming, is we look at, fixed charges and variable charges. And the fixed charges this is the system that has to be in place in order to supply water to everybody. And then the variable charge is based on, one entity one user uses a lot of water, one uses a small amount of water. And so we work to make sure that we create revenue stability, but also reflect usage rates appropriately, given that water is a precious resource. I forgot one thing on the sewer fund that I want to make sure I highlight, because it is important, which is in our request next year, we are requesting, and this will come to the two councils next week, we are requesting to move from 86 FTEs to 88 FTEs. So when I started 6 years ago today, it was my first day at South Platte Renew. We were 88.75 FTEs. After a year and a half, we moved it down to 86, and now we're proposing to move it back to 88. We think we think that's the appropriate level. We're adding an operator to help stabilize our operations group, and then we're adding another engineer that's more focused on our pilot and research center work, which is the work we're doing to stay ahead of those regulatory pressures that we have 10 years out. So I wanted to add that because I know added positions is something that is always important. Thank you, Chair.
Peter, I'll slide in just not so much a question, a comment. What'd you say, your Kentucky bluegrass problem? Be interesting, with, I don't know, satellites and AI or whatever, if there's a way to measure the amount of bluegrass we have in the city and how it declines over time. I know I just see more and more residential properties converting to xeriscaping or whatever. So it'd be interesting if there's any kind of metric that can be placed on it that kind of supports those the dollars that are being invested in the conservation side of things.
Yeah, and I think we can definitely look at that from a GIS perspective. I think our investments in conservation by comparison are fairly low, and that's because we weren't a community that was developed in the 90s and 2000s that was somewhat sprawling and put bluegrass everywhere. If you look at our city, there's not a lot of, there is bluegrass, but not like what you see in other areas of the Front Range where it's just all bluegrass. And so we're fortunate in that respect, but which I think is why we don't necessarily invest like the levels that other high water use communities, high irrigation water use communities do, because we just don't have as much as other entities because of the way we were originally developed back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and largely 40s, 50s, and 60s.
is nonetheless goes back to your point about using less water overall helps the system. And for whatever we have, I mean, anecdotal, I can see it. I can see the amount of grass decreasing. Marjan, your hands up, just.
Yes, sir. A quick question, Peter. Is there like any kind of programs that they promoting for people to, like, for instance, I was researching the amount of water it takes for grass versus trees. It's just like thousands of gallons versus, like 8 gallons for a tree. Is there like programs that they have that they can have for people that in kind of promote to maybe go toward zero skipping? Because I have to say, when I travel to California and these great areas, like properties that are very valuable, and thanks to their city, they have killed their environment. I mean, it looks really bad. Their front yards look really bad. The plants are all dead because the restriction, and it kind of worries me when I hear about these things, because you can see what they did in California, and it really destroyed the whole city, and it kind of makes me nervous when I hear about it. So, like, I hope this is not something is happening to Englewood. I would rather people have like programs that they have options, so they can create environments that looks attractive, is Mother Earth friendly. It's helping with the insects and the bees and all of that. At the same time, we're just not watering some bunch of grass that we just like growing it, and then we get forced to cut it again. And so it's something that is just more balance, I think. And if that's the case, also my next question is to connect to that, is that do you recommend people to do this before they do the change of the meters, or after they change the meters? So if you could kind of help me understand that, I appreciate it.
So the second question is, I think they can do it anytime, so we don't necessarily recommend before or after on the meters. It's something that if they want to move to lower water use, it's something that we would encourage people to do from a landscaping perspective. As it relates to programs to help encourage more native use plants and things like that, that's essentially Garden in the Box. So Garden in the Box that's what it's designed to do, we have a program to remove turf, which is just high water use grass, and then the complement is Garden in a Box, which then allows for native species, things like that, stuff that you'd see in Colorado as a native species that thrives in this type of environment. And so you remove your grass and you put in this type of native landscaping, which then ultimately helps you as a customer manage your water use more efficiently, which should cause your bill to go down.
Why don't we move on? I think we still got to squeeze in stormwater. Is that right?
Yeah, so I will turn this over to Director Rochelle, who will go through the stormwater fund.
Good afternoon, committee. Victor Rochelle, Director of Public Works. So let's get into stormwater fund. So revenues, seen some of this before. Pretty much flat, relatively speaking, across the board. Looking again at 2022 through 2023, including 2024 through May. So that's a little less than half the year there. As far as expenditures, again, 2022 through 2024 May, you'll notice capital is ramped back up, and we expect capital to continue to go up. We are in the midst of building the South Englewood Flood Reduction Project. That is going to be a large expense and is planned for and well underway, with that project nearing completion in Q4 and wrapping up in Q1 of 2025. Our budget request for stormwater, you'll see personnel down just slightly. We had a number of vacancies there. Commodities also slightly down. Contractual services, we do expect that to go down as we wrap up projects. We won't be using quite as many consultants. And then capital, Again, in 2025, we expect the vast majority of our capital expenditure for the South Englewood flood reduction to be paid out in 2024. There will be a little bit in 2025, but that'll mostly be wrapping up this year. Our capital projects, again, for 2025, we've got the Dry Gulch, Harvard Gulch IGA, that's with Mile High Flood District. The Old Hamden utility project, that is almost considered like a make-ready for the Complete Streets project that'll come afterwards. In that project, we're working and collaborating with utilities for water and sewer, and then for public works and stormwater, we're upsizing the stormwater line in that street. We got our rehabilitation and repair, and you'll see the South Englewood drainage plan there, 50/50 with Mile High Flood District, and then small area drainage improvements throughout the city. One enhancement request for 2025. We are requesting approval to purchase a pipe inspection trailer. This will allow the stormwater team to virtually inspect our own pipes. Right now, we're using a consultant. We do expect this to pay for itself within 3 to 5 years, even faster, the more we use it. We'll be able to get into the pipes, video them ourselves, check out if there are issues or if we have any concerns without having to go to an outside consultant. Revenue proposal, we are looking at a 5% increase. Again, we're tracking the construction price index for the increase, and we are proposing later this year so that when we have this discussion next year for the 2026 budget to have a rate study done for stormwater. We are beyond our current rate study. So we'll be ramping that up at the end of this year into early next year for future budget discussions. Considerations and things that we're seeing on the stormwater side. We're still inventorying the south side of the city. We completed the north side last year. We're probably a little over halfway through the south side as we speak. We're still seeing material prices fluctuate throughout the area. Labor rates are the same. Contractor availability, that is something that can be a struggle sometimes depending on the emergency, getting contractors to respond. We do have on-call contractors, but it just depends on the scenario and what's going on with respect to the response that we get. Staffing levels and vacancy rates. Our stormwater team in particular was fully staffed about 2 months ago. We have lost one of our staff members to a different field they elected to go to. So we're down one operator at the moment, but we're continuing to be on the hunt for filling that vacancy. And then last, extreme weather events. Rain events are always something that we try and plan for. We have stood up a coordination group among the departments. We know where our hot spots are at. We check those before any event that's over a 1/4 inch rainfall or greater. And then we do put our stormwater staff on call if we know there's going to be a big event as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have one question. How did you make the decision to go with the CCTV trailer versus a kind of all-inclusive truck? Was it just cost, or you had a small enough use case?
Mostly cost. So it was a balance of cost and use case. Utilities does have something similar, although they use it for their applications. And based on the size of pipes and the frequency we would expect to use it, we felt a trailer was the best use of those dollars. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Then can I get a motion to recommend City Council approve by resolution the proposed water, sewer, and stormwater enterprise fund budgets for 2025, including the recommended rates and fees?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. No old business tonight. Staff's choice. Peter, do you guys have anything more?
Nothing other than just a look ahead schedule. We have a number of things coming through the fall as we continue to move into construction. You can see.
I'm guessing September looks worse with what we've pushed from tonight. So probably fair to say next meeting will be a long one. So block off a little more of your calendars, probably safe to say.
I feel like we keep just moving this farther, just it keeps pushing month to month. So eventually I think we'll get to a point where we stabilize once we get a number of things under construction. So it's the positive is we're doing a lot. The downside is we're not getting out of here by 6 all the time.
Yep. No, we're doing good. Board members' choice. Is it would any board member like to bring anything up?
I have something, John. I was just curious. We've been
Please go ahead.
we've been down a board member for like 6 months, and maybe this is a question for Victoria. Are there any plans with Chuck's health leave to fill that board seat? What does that look like? I know we've had a few times where we've been pretty close on numbers.
Yeah, that's in my court, Ty, at this point. So I'm holding on to that, and we'll make the decision when I need to.
And then the second thing, I was just kind of curious if there was interest in having kind of quarterly site meetings elsewhere in some of the facilities. I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to have tours of any of the spots yet, and I was just curious if there's space available to do, say, meeting and then a short tour for some of the facilities that some of the members haven't seen.
Yeah, I think I can address that, Chair. So we're completing the first phase of the improvements to the Allen treatment plant, which will add a corridor of offices, our new control room, a new place for operators, and then also a nice new conference room that we plan to move this meeting to, so that it'll no longer occur at the Civic Center. It'll actually occur at the Allen plant. And we anticipate, don't hold me to this yet because it's construction, October is what we're anticipating is the October meeting will be at the Allen plant. And then moving forward, it's a fully equipped conference room that can do remote and in person, and that we would long-term hold the meeting there.
Any additional items?
I wanted to thank you, John, for telling us about booking the extra time for next time. It's really helpful. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Very good. Hearing nothing else, then I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks everyone for your patience tonight, and have a good evening with what's left.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.